The Kidnapped Bride. A novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This is an intriguing story which resonates with love, courage, resilience, and sacrifice. It is about an abducted Christian bride who was stolen by Muslim invaders from South Sudan and sold as a slave in Western Sudan. It has been written in English and translated into Arabic by the author Dr. Ahmed. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer, who may quote brief paragraphs for a review to be printed in a public newspaper, general magazine, school journal, or university article. This novel is a work of fiction, but the entire story is based on similar happenings which occurred in southern and western Sudan. All names, characters, places, and events are either the product of the author's imagination or used literary. Any resemblance to actual people, living or dead, events or locales is merely coincidental. Chapter 49. Satanic Rituals After the Trial of Slavery. The release of Imam Abdulrazak al-Mahdi was met with joyful celebration by his son-in-law, his 3 wives, their sons, daughters, grandchildren, relatives, friends, and worshippers at the Grand Mosque, which was the biggest house of God in the city of El Fasher. The celebration took place as soon as the so-called innocent virtuous Imam stepped out of the courtroom. Mr. Al-Sab slaughtered 7 lambs, 6 sheep, 5 calves, 4 cows, 3 camels, and countless chickens and pigeons as an honor to God by releasing his so-called innocent father-in-law from charges of slavery and adultery, with his head held high. As soon as the adulterous Imam left the courtroom, Mr. Al-Sab began screaming with joy and firing live bullets into the air. After every few steps the Imam took, he would jump over an animal slaughtered as an offering to God. It is customary in Sudan for a sick individual, a person who has survived a fatal traffic accident, or who has been acquitted of a serious felony charge, his family should sacrifice animal offerings as an offering to God and his noble messenger Muhammad. By jumping over the sacrifice, the person is expected to break the curse that brought him trouble, and almost claim his precious life, and become known to everyone. Some women were constantly shouting, ululations of joy, or shouts of happiness. The courtyard outside the courtroom has turned into a place for fun, dancing, and singing. The young women carry tambourines and drums and play with them, and everyone dances and has fun and joy. Some famous Sudanese singers, known as Ghannat or goalkeepers, were contracted to come with their big drums, play them, and sing vulgar songs during the celebration of Nasrallah and the triumphal release of the living saint and righteous Imam. Even the Noba dervish men came with their huge drums, and began beating them with large sticks and shouting with one voice in complete unison, Allah, Allah, the ever-living, the self-subsisting, without stopping. Some became ascetic devotees and began performing swirling dances and powerful chanting as acts of ecstatic devotion. These whirling dervishes had an abundance of frenzied energy as they danced, shook, screamed, and were extremely angry as if they were possessed by demons of rage or in epileptic fits. Some Sufi groups came with huge drums and began dancing and shouting in unison, Allah Akbar, God is great, God is the ever-living, the eternal, who will take neither a nap nor sleep. There are many weird religious behaviors that occur within the vast land in front of the criminal court in El Fasher. Mr. Al-Sab called on every worshipper, friend, or foe, to come to the Grand Mosque to enjoy a free meal. It happened to be an official holiday, meaning Holy Friday, and it was the day on which the blessed Imam was acquitted of the charges of slavery and adultery. He is expected to deliver a passionate sermon in his largest mosque during the communal public Friday prayer. In addition, regular worshippers and non-worshippers were promised free delicious food after noon prayers. The spacious hall of the mosque was filled to capacity with Muslim believers, and some of them even stood in the 4 streets surrounding it to perform the general Friday prayer and thank God for the victory and great relief. Some of the participants in the collective prayer had never gone to a mosque before, and some of them had never prayed or fasted in their lives, and did not know how to perform ablution before that historic day. Even non-Muslims, such as Christians and pagan African polytheists who worship the gods of Kujur and the spirits of their dead ancestors, entered the mosque on that day to pray to and thank God for the victorious release of the so-called innocent lamb Abul Satan al-Mahdi. The blessed Imam led the large crowd in a short 7-minute prayer and spent an hour and a half delivering the Friday sermon. In his sermon, he attacked the government, the southern Christians, the Nuba, and for Africans, the Masalit and Zaghawa tribes, and everyone who is not Arab. He said that Sudan needs ethnic cleansing of the enemies of God and his messenger who hate the truth of Islam. He even referred to some officials in the local government of El Fasher by name. He described the mayor as an atheist and a red communist. His fiery sermon filled the audience with intense enthusiasm for the truth of Islam and hatred towards the so-called enemies of Allah and his prophet Muhammad. He said that God will complete his light, even if the unbelievers hate it. After every sentence spoken by the honorable Imam, the crowd chanted, Allahu Akbar, or God is greater than all the pagan gods worshipped by infidels. Often, the difficult master initiates shouting. Mr. Al-Sab, the terrorist son-in-law of the Satan Maulana, shouts every now and then, Allahu Akbar. The crowd then chants, God is great. Talil, shouts Mr. Hard. God is great, the crowd thunders. Dangerous satanic rituals are about to take place after the Imam's fiery sermon because the phrase, Allahu Akbar or God is great, does not only mean God is greater than all gods for a Muslim. It is a war cry that Muslim mujahideen fighters must utter before they can attack their enemies. For a Muslim, every person who does not believe in his religion is an infidel and needs to be forced to convert to Islam by force, willingly or unwillingly. If the infidel refuses to accept Islam, he must be slaughtered like a sheep, and his money, livestock, women, and children must be taken as spoils of war for the Muslim mujahideen. This teaching was mentioned in the Holy Quran in Surat Al-Tawbah number 9, verse 5, and verse 29, known as Surah Bara. It is the last surah revealed in the Quran, and it contains the notorious verse of the sword that allows Muslims to spread Islam by force and kill anyone who refuses to accept their religion. Therefore, the more the war cry Allahu Akbar is repeated before an attack, the more enthusiasm will grip the hearts of the Muslim mujahideen, or holy fighters against the infidels or the enemies of God Allah, his messenger Muhammad, and the Muslims. So, if a crowd of Muslims chants this phrase passionately, trouble is likely to follow. That afternoon, the Imam incited the anger of the crowd against some African tribes that he called enemies of God, namely the Dinka, Nuba, Fur, Zaghawa, Masalit, and other African and southern tribes. The Imam's son-in-law, Sayyid al-Sab, filled the hearts of large crowds with war cries of Allahu Akbar and Talil, and God is great, and praise Allah, until their chests could no longer contain them. The crowd became like a volcano about to erupt, waiting for any small crack to erupt out and spew its vomit, and molten lava, and spread throughout the city like wildfire. That great explosion began with a satanic fatwa issued by the Imam himself when he ended his sermon by interpreting a verse from the Quran. The Imam shouted from the top of his pulpit, God has said, we have made the Dinka and the Nuba people as a livelihood for you. In other words, he said that God had authorized the mob to kill the Dinka and Nuba tribes and seize their women, children, livestock, and other property as their halal livelihood. Thus, the brutal massacre began inside the courtyard of the great mosque itself. Angry Arab crowds began killing every citizen they considered African, Southern, and Zanji or Negro. Therefore, the collective prayer followed by the sermon is the beginning of the satanic rituals. The black-skinned African victims ran for their lives in chaos. Many of them were trapped inside the mosque and slaughtered like sacrificial animals. By the time the police officers and military soldiers arrived, the massacre had spread to many African homes in the city. The houses of Southerners, Nuba, and Fur tribes were stormed and looted by the so-called black Arabs in the Darfur region, Misriya, Rizgat, and Bukhara. The wives, mothers, sisters, and daughters of Africans were gang-raped, and their men and children were brutally murdered. Police authorities and heavily armed military soldiers were unable to control the turmoil and massacre in the city until the next morning. By then, the number of victims would be countless. A rumor spread that police and army soldiers, mostly Muslim Arabs, had joined in the genocide and shot many Southerners, Nuba, Fur, Zagawa, and Masalit, and participated in the gang rape of their women. The only house of the Southerners that was not affected due to the heavy security was the house of the African lawyer, Mr. Akal. Fortunately, the intelligent Christian lawyer anticipated the eruption and massacre, so he took the freed Dinka girl, Ian, her American husband, Malwal, and the Azanda girl, Olivia, to his heavily guarded residence in time before Arab hands reached them. Chapter 50. The departure of the rebel fighter, Olivia. The city took a week to return to normal life. The central government in Khartoum intervened during this week and implemented some important administrative measures to solve the problem of El Fasher city. The entire administrative body of the city's local government was reshuffled. The atheist mayor was transferred to a remote city in the northern region of Sudan called Dongola, and he was replaced by an Arabman from the terrorist Muslim Brotherhood in the capital city. The judge of the criminal court and the jurymen were transported and distributed throughout the country. Even the Christian lawyer, Mr. Akal, received notice of transfer to Khartoum city within a month. Despite this, armed policemen with their police dogs continued to guard his house, until the day came when he and his family were taken to the railway station and exiled from the city of El Fasher and expelled from the Darfur region forever. Meanwhile, freed slave girl Ayan Majak, her infant daughter Sakina bint Al-Qatham or daughter of the black slave, and her American husband, Malwal Deng, continue to live in Mr. Akal's house until security is fully restored in the city. Then they can be sent under police protection to wherever they want to go. The Azanda girl Olivia also hid in the same guarded house of the smart African lawyer, and waited for the right time to escape the north and return to her family in the south. As for the adulterous imam and his satanic fatwa, he was considered infallible, or a righteous man of God who had no mistakes in his decision. This conclusion is based on the Sharia law that stated if a religious leader or imam of the Islamic nation issues a fatwa, he must receive 2 rewards from God if he is correct in his fatwa, and 1 reward if he makes a mistake in his decree. Accordingly, whoever loves the imam of the largest mosque in the city believes that he has received 2 rewards from God for his satanic fatwa, and whoever does not love him believes that he has received 1 reward for his incitement to kill Southern, Fur, and Nuba tribes, and rob them of their property, and his instigation of Arabs of raping black-skinned African women. As for those who hate him, and there are many, his entire life is a fulfillment of the prophecy of the coming Antichrist. The police authorities were unable to arrest him because his brother-in-law, a member of parliament in the central government in Khartoum, Mr. Al-Sab intervened and blamed the massacre on ignorant Arab worshippers who misunderstood the meaning of the satanic fatwa revealed by God from the zodiac sky to his righteous imam. The city was placed under full curfew before the unrest and turmoil were over. At least the American groom, Malwal, was able to rescue his kidnapped Dinka bride, Ayan, from the hands of those who enslaved and abused her, despite the bloody fighting. Even the Christian lawyer, Mr. Akal, considered this a real victory, despite his loss of the case. It is seen as a true blessing from heaven that nothing bad happened to the 3 Southern friends Ayan, Malwal, and Olivia during Black Friday. The 3 friends planned to escape the city as soon as they got the green light from the police authority to leave. The American husband was able to obtain a plane ticket for his Dinka wife, which was supposed to take her to the United States more than a year ago. Fortunately, the airline reissued it. He still has his return ticket, so it's only a matter of time before he and his first wife, Ayan, can travel to America via Nairobi, Kenya. His missing bride, who was miraculously found, can get her Sudanese passport reissued in Juba City. As for his Azanda lover, Olivia, she booked herself a ticket to sail on a ship from the city of Kasti to South Sudan. Another sad event marred their departure. The Sharia law did not allow Ikhlas to claim custody of her daughter Sakina from the imam, who fathered her child outside the bond of Islamic marriage. This is because Islamic law gives custody of children to their Muslim father. Therefore, her child, Sakina, was taken from her by 3 police officers and transferred to her biological father, His Eminence Imam Abdul Razak al-Mahdi. The Southern Christian lawyer advised the grieving Dinka mother, Ayan, not to try to enter into another legal battle with that dangerous Muslim imam. Mr. Akal based his advice on his knowledge of Islamic Sharia law, which gives custody of children to the father, and not to the mother after their separation through divorce. There are only a few days left, a fleeting time for the 3 Southern friends to say goodbye to the Christian lawyer, Mr. Akal, his family, and each other, and part forever. Beloved Mawal wishes in his heart that those few days could be extended for a few years. He wants his Azanda lover, Olivia, to stay with him and his Dinka wife, Ayan, for the rest of their lives. For this reason, the couple planned to travel the day before Olivia left for Kasti. But the beautiful Azanda girl decided to surprise the Dinka couple and leave before the appointed day. She does not want her wife Ayan to feel that her husband Mawal is still attached to her as his second wife, or that he loves her more than his first wife. 3 days before their scheduled trip, Mawal got up from sleep, went as usual to Olivia's room, and knocked on her door. He knows she's an early riser, but he's surprised when she doesn't respond to his knocks. He longed to see her and talk to her that morning. He understood that their days with each other could be counted on the fingers of one hand. If he could, he would have convinced his wife Ayan to let his beloved Olivia share their bed at night. When there was no answer, Mawal dragged his feet and crept away from her room. He turned and looked at her door again, hoping she would come and open it for him. The vision was clearly obscured by his heavy tears. How he wishes for their happy days to come back, so that he can enjoy those wonderful days with his beloved Olivia, which they spent almost naked like Tarzan and Tarzana in the jungle without the furs of the lion and lioness, or their wonderful honeymoon in Jebel Mara. He wished he had met the Azanda girl before he married the Dinka girl. But he knows that it is just a dreaming among the 7th impossibility, because even God cannot change the events of what men did in his past times. Somehow, Mawal managed to reach the living room, where he found Mr. Akal sitting alone, reading his morning newspaper. His wife, Ayan, and wife, Mary, are busy in the kitchen preparing breakfast for everyone. Mawal also picked up another newspaper and sat down trying to read it, but his tears obscured his vision. He put the newspaper down, buried his head in his arms, and began to weep silently for his dear friend Olivia, who would soon be leaving them. While he was weeping, he felt someone standing in front of him. His nose could smell the good perfume that Olivia always loved to put on her sexy body. His exhausted soul was instantly revived, and he felt as if someone had reached deep into his heart and filled his soul with joy. He raised his head, opened his eyes, and looked at his beloved friend, Olivia, standing in front of him. His instinctive reaction was to take her in his arms and kiss her on her sweet lips. However, he recalled that she suggested that they avoid any physical contact from the day they agreed to separate permanently from each other inside the hotel room. Instead, Mawal immediately rose to his feet. Then he whispered happily, "Why did you wake up so late today, my dear?" Instead of hearing the sweet voice of his beloved Olivia, Mawal heard the hoarse voice of a man answering his question. He shook his head to make sure he wasn't hallucinating or daydreaming. He was sure that his nose had smelled her sweet perfume, that his eyes had seen Olivia's beautiful face, and that he was about to touch her tender body with his hands. Like a mirage, the beautiful image of his beloved girlfriend mysteriously transformed into a tall Dinka man even taller than him. "He's the Christian lawyer. This letter and this package from Miss Olivia to you." Mr. Akal repeated his words 3 times before Mawul heard and understood them. He received the letter and package with trembling hands and waited for an explanation. Why would Olivia give him a letter and package through Mr. Akal? Why didn't she hand them over to him personally? Lawyer Akal said politely, "The Azanda girl Olivia left last night and deposited these things with me so that I can deliver them to you personally." Mawul stood as silent as a statue and continued to stare in amazement at Mr. Akal's face. She said she was going to take the express bus to Kosti City last night. She planned to board her ship to Juba City early this morning. Mawul's eyes filled with tears as he stood there without uttering a single word. To clarify the matter further, Mr. Akal said a final sentence before returning to his chair and continuing to read his newspaper. Now her ship may have already left the port of Kosti and headed towards the city of Juba. It would be impossible for anyone to convey in words the sadness that filled Mawul's heart after he learned that his beloved Olivia had already left him and was gone forever. It would be unfair to say that the abandoned lover, Mawul, felt the same pain that any other lover would feel when his beloved suddenly leaves him. No matter how long the separation between them lasts, the lover may always long to see his beloved one day. Even a lover whose beloved girlfriend has died may dream of seeing her in heaven or in another world. But for the jilted Dinka lover, there is no such thing to hope for. His Azanda lover was gone forever, taking with her all hope, as if she had vanished from existence like a mirage, leaving behind a barren desert that God could never recreate again. There is no possibility now of building a bridge in the world of imagination or dreams that could connect him to her. The few sentences she wrote with her fingertips in her final letter revealed that their separation was forever. Below is her last message to her beloved friend, without additions, deletions, or modifications. A good soldier must leave as soon as the battle is over. Those for whom the battle was fought must reap the fruits of victory. Yes, I was born to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. Maybe one day, in a remote corner of the jungle, I will lay down my weapon and die alone. Goodbye, my friend, Soldier Mawul. Your fellow rebel soldier, Olivia Thomas. Those few words flew like poisoned arrows and entered her lover's heart. He sank into a deep abyss of sadness. He wept silently all day, trying to hide his heart condition from his Dinka wife. Ian knows that it was Olivia who sacrificed her love for Mawul on her behalf because she wanted her to have a good and safe life. So that morning, Ikalaz also cried silently because Olivia was gone. Somehow the hours of that day passed, and the lover remained in a state of deep mourning for his beloved, who had passed away and left him forever. No human language can describe the great sadness that continued to eat away at his heart like a cancer. Chapter 51. The Sharia court issues the verdict of obedience against the disobedient Muslim wife. The next day, after the second wife, Olivia, left, the first wife, Ian, received a small invitation letter from the Sharia court in El Fasher city. She is addressed under the names Ian Majok and Ikalaz Abdullah Deng, who was previously known as the Southern Dinka Christian girl, Al-Qatham al-Gulafa, or the slave, the uncircumcised infidel woman. The report stated that she must appear the next morning before the blessed judge of the Sharia court, Al-Sheikh Isa Musa Harun Ibrahim. The Southern Christian lawyer does not understand why the freed Dinka girl Ikalaz is to appear in court again. Her slavery case had already been considered by judges and juries in the Sharia court as well as the criminal court. Mr. Akal laughed at the invitation and assured the couple, Mawul and Ian, that the Sharia court had no authority to change the decision of the criminal court. Whatever the Sharia court judge decides, he will not be able to return the southern girl, Ian Majok, to the house of slavery again and live as the Dinka slave girl Ikalaz Abdullah Deng. She has been liberated from that slavery forever, and no force on earth can deprive her or strip her of her freedom, no matter the cost. All she has to do is go to the Sharia courtroom tomorrow, bear the merits of the trial, and leave safely and freely. Therefore, Mr. Akal's encouraging words gave peace of mind to the Dinka wife, Ayan, and her American husband, Mawal. Before her departure, Olivia had divided the spoils that she had recovered from the Alhambadi bandit Wad Mahira bint Aboud after killing him, leaving the first half to Mawal, and taking the other half with her. She put a hefty sum of money and gold in a box and gave them to Mr. Akal to pass on to her ex-husband along with her final farewell message. Mawal was surprised when he opened the large package and found money and gold. The huge sum of money she left after her departure confirmed her intense love for him and increased his longing for her. Even his Dinka wife, Ayan, was also amazed at the large amount of money the Azanda girl Olivia had left them. Mawal promised his Dinka wife that he would buy her some beautiful dresses when they arrived at Heathrow International Airport in London during their trip to the United States. They only had 3 days remaining before they left. The wife, Ikalaz, encouraged her husband, Mawal, to give some money to Mr. Akal and his family. Her American husband accepted her proposal and gave some money to his wife's legal lawyer, who courageously defended her amidst great opposition and hostility from racist Arabs. The Christian lawyer and his wife, Mary, were touched by the couple's generosity and prepared a large feast to celebrate their imminent departure. The next day, inside a small room in the main complex of the small cases court, a group of religious judges gathered and waited for the nashis or disobedient Muslim wife to arrive. When the couple, Mawal and Ayan, entered the small room, at first, they thought they had arrived at the wrong place, but the presence of their arch-enemy, Imam Abdul Razak al-Mahdi, dispelled their suspicions. There are a few people who have nothing to do in life other than poking their noses into other people's affairs, scattered across the 10 chairs that fill half the Sharia courtroom. 3 judges of the Sharia court of Allah and His Prophet, dressed in religious robes, sit on wooden chairs on a platform behind a large table inside the room facing the audience, as in a mosque, waiting for the Imam and the Mamun to begin the congregational prayer or the funeral prayer for the disobedient wife. There are 4 policemen armed to the teeth, 2 of them sitting on chairs at the main door, and 2 guarding the space between the audience and the panel of court. The African couple, Mawal and Ayan, entered and sat slowly and fearfully on 2 chairs without greeting the religious group. The beautiful and sexy Dinka girl, who was recently freed from the bondage of the Islamic hijab and abaya, wore a noticeably short dress that revealed her long legs and half of her thighs and hips. Her big ass and highly raised pomegranate-like boobs were half visible. The short dress was given to her by the Christian woman, Mary, Mr. Akal's wife. So, it is smaller than her height and narrower than her large body, thus, it became like an outfit called a hugging dress that a girl wears to show off her sexy body and inner charms. She is sexy, attractive, and hot in that tight and short dress. The eyes of the 3 holy judges of the Sharia court of God and His messenger followed her until she sat down. Even as she sat, their eyes were still focused on her exposed thighs, like hungry wolves looking at a stray lamb. Ayan did all she could to discourage their unseemly glances, but when nothing seemed to help her to protect herself from their curiosity, she took out her handkerchief, placed it on her thighs, and put both hands in her lap. However, the eyes of the 3 judges continued to devour her half-naked body. She felt their eyes like X-rays penetrating all her layers of flesh and clothing. It was as if she were sitting naked in front of them, and they could see her inner nakedness, such as her black pubic hair and pussy. However, those men of God follow the commandment of the Prophet Muhammad, who said, "A first look at the woman is for you, and the second look is against you." If a Muslim man sees a beautiful woman, averts his gaze, and then looks at her again, he will be in danger of committing a munkar sin and exposing himself to entering hell on the day of resurrection. But an intelligent man, like these 3 righteous judges, can manipulate this religious restriction without committing an evil haram act. To avoid punishment in the grave, though the 2 angels of death, Munkar and Nakir, and bitten by the bald-headed snake, the 3 old men kept their first sight fixed on the sexy, half-naked body of the Dinka wife. They look at her sexy legs, her thighs, her bare shoulders, her beautiful face, and her curly afro hair. Their tears may flow, their eyes may dry, and they may fly, plucking their eyes from their hollows and making their faces stiff, but none of them changed their gaze or blinked for a moment until the angry Imam Abdul Razak was forced to protest against their obscene, inappropriate, and immoral behavior. Out of jealousy, not righteousness, the adulterous Imam woke the three judges from their lustful coma by reciting a well-known condemnation prayer based on a verse from the Holy Quran. O our Lord, do not hold us accountable for what the evil guys among us did. Surat Al-Araf 7, verse 155. This powerful verse changed the judges' attitudes towards the sexy Dinka girl at once. Suddenly Ayan transformed from the beautiful and sexy virgin of heaven into the whore of Babylon, the wife of Satan. Moments ago, she was a virgin nymph of heaven or mermaid swimming in the river of wine in paradise, but suddenly she became a jinni, a bride of the Nile River who is the consort of a jinni. The nymph in the Quran is a beautiful virgin created by God for the sexual pleasure of a man in the Garden of Eden. Every Muslim man is promised by God that he will have 40 virgins in paradise if he dies a normal death, and if he dies a martyr, by blowing up his body in smithereens, he will have 72 virgins. A nymph girl is beautiful, loving, loyal, and always a virgin. She does not urinate, defecates, does not menstruate, and does not become pregnant with a child, even if the man had sex with her 1,000 times. When a Muslim man enters into a sexual relationship with a mermaid girl, she will become a virgin again as soon as the intercourse ends. This promise alone prompted many young Muslims to die as martyrs by having their bodies blown to bits and pieces. The three judges became angry towards the disobedient wife, Ayan, when they realized that she had led them into sin and placed them at the gates of hell. Therefore they decided to punish her for her temptation and make sure that she would never appear again in this un-Islamic dress in a public place. One of God's righteous men asked, "Has the suspected disobedient Muslim wife come to the courtroom yet?" He said this knowing full well that the sexy girl who seduced them with her inner charms was her. Imam Abdul Razak al-Mahdi replied, "She is sitting in front of you." "O Maulana Abdul Razak Wad al-Imam Muhammad Ahmed al-Mahdi, did you marry such a bad woman?" The same judge asked. This question challenged Maulana and made him feel that his religious integrity and commitment were at stake. As a result, he jumped to his feet and made some righteous moves towards his rival. Then the imam of the largest mosque in the city said, "This is her photo that I took a few days ago," pointing with his hand like a gun to a photo of Ikhlas wearing one of her black abayas and veils in which she used to live like a butterfly inside her ugly cocoon. She was also coiled up like a turtle when she was an unpaid maidservant and sex slave in his sacred residence, which was called the House of Virtue, during his plea in the criminal court. Maulana continued, "This is how she covered her body and her private parts when she lived with me." The three judges did not believe that the girl in the picture was the same girl who had caused the fire of lust to ignite in their holy bodies. To make a comparison and get a better look, the blessed men of God ordered the beautiful, sexy, half-naked wife to stand before them. When Ayan came forward and stood in front of them, their eyes bulged out again. It took them a long time to compare the black demon in the picture to Miss Sudan standing in front of them, and in this way, they satisfied their insatiable sexual lust that only the fires of hell could satisfy. "Have you become a Christian girl?" asked one of them. Ayan replied, "I have been a Christian girl since childhood." Another judge asked, "Why did you throw away your Islamic abaya and hijab and wear a bad dress?" "This is a Christian dress worn by infidel Khojiat women." "I told you, I've been a Christian girl my whole life. Imam Abdul Razak was the one who forced me to convert to Islam and wear Muslim women's clothing." Ayan framed her answer as a challenge rather than a response. "Did you know that the Sharia court will flog you 53 lashes for wearing clothes like this?" "I am not a Muslim girl, so you cannot force me to dress like a Muslim wife," Ayan shouted angrily. "It doesn't matter what religion you follow. As long as you live in a Muslim land, you must dress like a Muslim woman." The speaker of these words was pulling his long beard, and his eyes were red like burning coal. The Dinka wife Ayan realized that the judge's mind was as rigid as the Sharia law he had followed since childhood. Therefore, she decided not to get into unnecessary arguments that might force him to issue a flogging sentence against her. She heard that many southern Christian girls in the city of Khartoum were beaten with whips on their buttocks and bare backs for wearing pants and shirts. Maulana Abdul Razak's patience has run out once again. He cited another hadith of the Prophet for the three judges: "Whoever among you sees a munkar or a sinful act, let him change it with his hand, if he is unable, then with his tongue, and if he is unable, then with his heart, and this is the weakest of faith." This time, the three judges of the Sharia court of God and his Prophet knew that the Imam was publicly accusing them of having weak faith. To refute his words, one of them shouted at Ayan, reprimanding her, "I swear to God Almighty, if you were my daughter, I would cut you into pieces because of wearing these scandalous, dirty dress." Maulana Abdul Razak replied, saying, "You know that she is not your daughter, and you also know that she is my wife and my horma. Shouldn't you fulfill God's judgment on her and leave the rest to me?" The Imam's words left the judges with no choice but to end the gathering and issue a ruling of obedience to the disobedient wife of Imam Abdul Razak. Therefore, the main judge opened his mouth as big as he could and shouted, "I issue a verdict of obedience against the disobedient Muslim wife, Iqalaz Abdullah Deng, wife of Imam Maulana Abdul Razak al-Mahdi. The police must immediately take her to the house of obedience in the home of her legitimate Muslim husband." Chapter 52. The disobedient Muslim wife in an obedient home. The house of obedience is the place where a disobedient Muslim wife or a rebellious woman is detained, where the police must, by order of the Sharia court, take her by force to live with her legal husband against her will. She is usually tied up and imprisoned inside a dark room until her husband is sure that she will not rebel against him again. During her discipline, she will be beaten, raped, and starved until she is subdued. In the Holy Quran, it is permissible for a husband to beat his rebellious wife. See Surat An-Nisa 4, verse 34. It is also in the hadith that the Prophet Muhammad said, "A man should not be asked why he beats his family." The American husband Mawal was expecting his Azanda wife, Olivia, to leave, but he did not expect that the police would take his Dinka wife, Ayan, from him soon as well, and that he would not be able to do anything to prevent them from taking her in front of his eyes. Immediately after the judge issued the obedience ruling on Imam Abdul Razak's disobedient wife, Iqalaz Abdullah Deng, the police ordered her to follow them. The southern girl, Ayan, refused to obey their orders and tried to prevent them from taking her away. She struggled and screamed at the top of her lungs, but to no avail. Even Mawal tried to prevent the policemen from performing their duty. In response, he was severely beaten, kicked, slapped, and threatened with being thrown behind bars if he continued to obstruct justice. She struggled and screamed at the top of her lungs, but to no avail. Even Mawal tried to prevent the policemen from performing their duty. In response, he was severely beaten, kicked, slapped, and threatened with being thrown behind bars if he continued to obstruct justice. The police then dragged Iqalaz out of the courtroom against her wishes. As she struggled, her short dress was wrapped above her waist, her little red swimsuit like lingerie, and her thighs and hips were completely exposed to the spectators. In this inappropriate exposure, she was forcibly dragged into a police vehicle. Inside the police car, she was handcuffed and forced to lie on the floor of the vehicle. Her so-called Muslim husband Imam Abdul Razak refused to accompany the police car and his rebellious wife. He thought it would be a shame to be taken to his holy abode in a police car like a criminal. While the police vehicle was leaving the courtyard of the building of the Sharia court, the so-called Muslim wife who denounced her husband's authority continued to scream and struggle for her freedom and dignity as a human being. She lost her voice before the vehicle reached the residence of the imam of the largest mosque in the city of El Fasher. Maulana has 4 legitimate Muslim wives and 4 separate homes. Each house is occupied by one wife and her offspring, and is located in a different section of the city. On that day, the imam asked the Sharia court to order the police to move his rebellious wife to a different house than the one she had been living in before their appearance at the recent slavery trial. In front of that house, many neighbors came to their doors to witness the implementation of the verdict of obedience verdict on the disobedient wife of Maulana Abdul Razak al-Mahdi. The sight of the rebellious wife and the police amused them more than it angered them. Some young teenagers chanted for the police when they saw the rebellious wife, Ikhlas, in her short, torn dress, red underwear, and her thighs and buttocks exposed. Some women protested because the policemen did not cover the awara, or the private parts of the disobedient wife, before they pulled her from the police vehicle and threw her into the house of obedience. Only teenage girls felt sorry for her. On that day, the angry Imam Abdul Razak was determined and swore by God Almighty and his noble messenger to calm his anger and take revenge for the humiliation of the long trial of slavery and adultery that he had gone through. He flogged his rebellious wife, Ikhlas, on her hands, legs, buttocks, back, and shoulders with his long whip. He even slapped her and kicked her with his shoes in front of the onlookers, because of the disgrace she brought to his good reputation and a scandal to his righteous family members. He told her that none of his wives had ever disobeyed him before. When the police managed to drag Ikhlas into the house, some of the older boys wanted to follow them. But the imam chased these children away with his rod, cursing them and cursing their parents for not disciplining them. However, the horny teenagers who became like hangry dogs who saw exposed fresh meat did not leave until the police intervened, frightened them, and chased them away with batons. Inside the house, Imam Abdul Razak locked his disobedient wife Ikhlas in one of his dark and unused storerooms. Before he left the warehouse, he swore to God that he would not feed her any food or give her water until she changed her stubborn attitude and expelled the demons from her accursed head. Ayan did not know that she had become a real slave of Maulana until that day. Even her bitter experiences at the hands of Haj Radwan al-Taishi, Wad Mahira bint Aboud, and Bint al-Zubair Pasha did not make her feel that she had become a slave to any of them. In those days, she viewed them all as outlaws who did what was not approved by Sudanese law. But on this day, she realized that the Sudanese laws that were supposed to protect her freedom and preserve her dignity were the ones that enslaved her. For the first time, Ayan realized that she was living in a land without laws. Within this dark warehouse, euphemistically called the House of Obedience, she was denied the basic human needs for human existence. Her alleged Muslim husband is determined not to allow her to leave the House of Obedience until her spirit of resistance is broken, and she is tamed like a disobedient woman in the Quran to become an obedient Muslim wife like his other wives. He chained her to the bed and fed her like a mad woman or a mad dog. For 3 days, she did not have access to water or soap to wash her clothes or clean her body. She had no light or window except a small door that remained locked with a large padlock at all times. She is not even allowed to see or meet her infant daughter, Sakina, during those 3 days. On the 3rd day, the imprisoned Dinka wife, Ayan, cried bitterly when she realized that she had missed her train heading to the city of Kasti, then sailing by ship to Juba City, and from there flying abroad to America. She thought that her American husband, Malwal, had left without her and traveled back to the United States of America, a land where women are treated with freedom and dignity and are allowed to have all their rights. She concluded that Malwal had certainly returned to a country where there were equal laws for all people, regardless of their gender, race, religion, or skin color.